All right, shalom, and welcome to another Bible study that Yahweh has enjoined unto us here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. My name is Esaac ben Israel, and I'm the priest of the United Congregation of Israel. And this is our weekly Bible study that we do every fourth day, or as it is more commonly known as Wednesday, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These classes are broadcast on our YouTube channel, the UCI 1, and also they are recorded on our call line as well. Before we get started, today we're going to begin with a prayer as usual. We're all going to face the east, and all males remove your head covering, and females always pray with your head covered. Abba Father, Most High Covenant Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, we thank you, Father, for calling us out of gross darkness into your glorious and wonderful light. We will never be able to thank you enough, Yahweh, for we were happy in darkness, as it is commonly said, just being ignorant and happy in that ignorance. That was us. We truly thank you, Yahweh, that you have called us out of this gross darkness, and we pray now, Father, that you would direct our steps. We pray, Father, that you would give us all the knowledge and understanding that we need to refine our walk, and the things that we need to help feed the lost sheep. We know that you have said in all the places where you have scattered us, you will be a little sanctuary unto them. And we pray, Father, that you would magnify the works of our hands, that we may be able to do our part in reaching all of your scattered sheep that are scattered here, there, that are truly searching for a way to serve Yahweh, their Elohim, and to refine their walk in a way that would be pleasing unto you. We pray, Father, that you would allow us to borrow of your spirit of understanding, that we may be able to not only edify the lost sheep, but even edify the found sheep as well. For we know that our understanding is on levels, and we're on whatever level that you allow us to be on. So we pray, Father, that you would allow those levels to grow, that our understanding will grow, but also we pray that you would allow our hearts to grow, that we may be able to act in the right way with that understanding. We ask these prayers not only for those that gather with us physically, but even those that gather by way of phones and by way of internet, those that gather out of a pure heart to serve you in truth and in spirit. In Yahshua HaMashiach's holy and divine name we pray. Amen and hallelujah. All right. Now, if you guys are watching anything on the news, you, of course, have seen Trump's statement on the white supremacy issue. And, of course, the first thing was he tried to talk in a circle and say, there was wrong done on many sides. And, it's one of those things to where now the people who are normally in his circle, it's causing them to pull away, to at least make a statement to separate themselves from it. And we have to consider that we're not even a year into this presidency. I mean, you have to ask, really look at the thing. When we looked at that at some point our people are going to be forced out of this country, we know that the children of Israel are not set to be anybody's servants forever. It's when we didn't serve Yahweh, we were then made to go or to serve the heathens. We have been scattered about for an enormous amount of time, but it is not our destiny to stay servants. We are only forever servants to Yahweh. That's it. So what we have to understand is that either we serve Yahweh or we serve the heathen. And whatever problems we think we have, this is that thing that when people hear the word, they got a problem with this, they got a problem with that, They don't want to. You got sisters don't want to cover their head. You got sisters upset because they can't wear their long drawers to church. They want to put on some tights and walk in the door. Then you got brothers want to walk in with a tank top and greased all up. You know, you're not going to be able to come before Yahweh that way. But what we end up doing is we got a problem with all of these things, so we can't serve Yahweh the way that he declares. So we're happy being the servants of the heathen, which no matter how much money you make here, these people have let us know that you're still a different level or class of a citizen being here. There's a documentary, I think it's called The 13th, where it talks about how even when they decided, you know, okay, we're going to say that these people are free, but put in a little clause that they have all these rights, except if they're prisoners, except if they have lost it by doing some crime. So automatically, that was the white policy that said, okay, we have to make as many of them criminals as possible. So putting the drugs in the neighborhood, all of these things, all of this stuff moved, because understand, before that, they were doing it on their own anyway, making us criminals. They just go down the street and say, hey, you owe me some money. You know, we know about convict leasing. We know about sharecropping. All of these things were made to keep us in bondage legally. But then as time went on, of course, they developed more covert and slick means of doing this same thing. Trump eventually backed up his statement or tried to then speak out against the white supremacists, but only after everybody clowned him. Then he came out and said it, and we know that that wasn't real. And we're talking about in this day and age, after all of the things that we've gone through here, you still find this push that we are the problem, that they need to get rid of us. Now, this is amazing to some of the black people who believe that they've made it. You know, they're thinking, okay, this is an isolated situation, but what they're going to find is that this is going to continuously grow. All of the people who have had these things being in the closet with them, they have gotten a spark from Donald Trump. So all what used to be hid, and I won't say hid, they just were not marching down the street anymore. But the government always knew that the Ku Klux Klan was there. The Ku Klux Klan has truly given up their hoods and taken on police uniforms. If you are trying to kill black people, if you are a white supremacist, what's the best job for you to have? A policeman. It is the only place where you actually get to kill black people and get days off after you do it, paid. You keep extending your vacation the more black people you kill. It is the perfect job for white supremacists. So we have to consider that. Let's start today in Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1, and let's read verses 8 through 22. Because what we find here is, for the first time, really, and it is quite ironic, because we kind of mentioned it, I want to say maybe a month ago, that white America never has to answer or denounce the doings of other white people. You know, anytime a Muslim does something, they go to other Muslim leaders and say, you know, denounce the action made by such and such. And what does it do? It helps divide the Muslim community. So what they want to do is, as soon as that somebody does something, they go to all of the leaders and make them denounce it. So then those people will then be mad at one another when one of them denounces it. Well, for the first time, it just happened on their side. Because now something is happening. We're talking about this, a white girl got killed. We're talking about 2 officers that were trying to, deal in this thing. They end up getting killed. So now you're talking about white people getting killed on this. Now, all of a sudden, there's this thing where somebody has to be accountable for this. So now they push it to Trump to denounce this thing, and he couldn't do it. He would not do it. So you see that no matter how much education we get here, no matter how much money we get here, there is never going to be an equal playing field. And we want to keep thinking that somehow these things are going to change. Rodney King was beaten, and it was on video, but it was the new form. This was our first time really having all of this on tape. They still, with their policy, moved the trial to a place where all of the police were going to win. We're talking like the part that people didn't understand was they claimed that they couldn't have a fair trial there because so many people knew of that particular thing. So then they moved it to some semi-valley or whatever that is, where most of all of the people there are either policemen or firemen. So they then went once again amongst their own peers and got the not guilty verdict. So it is this same thing that has systematically that has happened, and it is still going on to this day. Exodus chapter 1, and let's start that at verse 8.
Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
Right, and we got a new king in the office now. And he don't know Jack. He don't know Joseph. He don't know Jack. That's what he don't know. This need to say that there rose up a new king over America, which didn't know Jack. Because he don't know Jack. So now, and it's funny, I was just watching something on CNN, and it was a white guy that said, I don't think Trump even understands the history of this country and what certain things have taken place. So I don't think he understands that, so he can't intelligently really make a determination because he really doesn't know the real history of it. Go ahead.
And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falls out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them out of the land.
So then what we see then, the privileged people of Egypt who benefited from the servitude of the Israelites, which we're looking at the same thing here. Okay? The privileged people then have a certain level of paranoia. See, it is the privileged paranoia of the oppressor. The privileged paranoia of the oppressor says, look, these people may rise up against us one day. Why? Because they know what they've done to you. So their paranoia is working on them constantly. So let us deal wisely with them. See, this is why we've been given the terms minority. See, this term is given to get inside your head to automatically make you feel like a lesser individual, and for you to even use that term concerning yourself. See, when you say, I'm a minority, it is automatically it is saying something on two levels, that you're not it's not as many of you as it is of them. And if you're a minority, then you are a lesser figure, you're lesser this. It's more than just about numbers. See, this term minority is meant to degrade you. And it's one of those double-edged things that you deal with without even knowing that you're dealing with it, because it was designed that way. Go ahead.
Verse 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses.
Now, it used to be a point in time that whenever there was labor that needed to be made, whenever there was something that needed to be built, it would be our people who were called to do those things. It used to be a point when you were driving down the street and you saw the road crews who were fixing the road. You saw one white man out there and everybody else was black. And those were pretty good jobs. All right. Now, you see whole crews of Mexicans. Or Hispanics, rather. Entire crew. There are times I've gone through construction sites and did not see one brother. And it was quite amazing, because it's not something that you are accustomed to seeing, if you are a certain age. See, younger people may have never seen that. But it was customary for us to go and drive through these work sites and see nothing but our people. Not anymore. Go ahead.
Exodus chapter 1 and verse 12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
Right. So they realized that working us to death was not working. See? And do understand that we're talking about educated people here in this country who know these stories. So they altered the dealings. Once they look at these things and look at, hey, our people, these people were already worked to death before. You can't work them to death. You work them to death, all they do is multiply more. So you're going to have to find some other means of controlling these people. Go ahead.
And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service, wherein they made them serve, was with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live.
Right. To this day, they would give a job to a black female. They push the college education of the black female. They push for the black female to be employed. And the push is for the black male to be criminalized. So that now you have a policy that makes sure that he can't get a job. Now, do understand, we've several people that I've known have encountered the same thing, where Gentiles have a criminal record, and yet they be working side by side in a place that no other people are supposed to have criminal records. And you look up and say, well, how he get in here? Because I worked hard not to get a criminal record to get in here. And several other people that I tried to get in here, they couldn't get in here because they had criminal records. Then you look up and find out, that one of your white counterparts has been there 5, 6, 7 years, and he has an extensive criminal record. See, a criminal record to them does not end their work life. It's not the same for us. Go ahead.
But the midwives feared Elohim, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive.
Right. So you see that the drive to kill, because how do you really diminish the numbers? The women make the babies. They have the babies. But when you're talking about really destroying the numbers, you have to destroy the males, because one male can fertilize and make 100 babies. One woman can't have 100 babies. One man can. He can produce that many. So if you then can lock up the males or do something to the males to help diminish their numbers, they can't just go in this day and age and say, all right, let's go kill all of them. So it has to be a more covert mission to do that in this day and time. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, on that, they've got it two sides with this whole plan. Criminalize the males, you get the women into corporate America, then what happens? As you're climbing up the ladder, you don't want to have children. No. You're not going to mess up my career by getting me pregnant.
Right. And then the mindset is this working class brother is not good enough for you. See? So now this is why you have the Bachelorette and the what? She had 2 or 3 black guys to choose from and about 15 white. So automatically, by sheer number, they're letting you know what they intend on her to pick. Understand, that should have been opposite. Consider, how many times have you seen a white bachelorette and there were 15 black dudes that she got to choose from? They would completely riot and tear that show down. Yet you have a black woman and the majority of everything that she has to choose from are white men. So they, you know, and they handpick the brothers that are going to have certain problems so that they can get ruled out because she didn't want to pick that one of them anyway. Mm-hmm. They knew presenting this. So when you know, lock up the males, destroy the males, you automatically have this enormous population of women who don't have a mate. And people just don't want to look at it for what it is. We're talking here in Atlanta, and this was years back statistics, that it was like 25-1. So if everybody's talking this, you know, hey, there's somebody for everybody. No, them numbers don't add up. Them numbers don't add up, especially going through, you know, what has been put into play here. And it's hard for men to explain that to black women when they're saying, well, I got up and I got a job and I got an education. Why can't you do the same? Because see, the powers that be are not coming at her. Not in that manner. Sure, she has issues. Sure, she has things that she has to deal with in the workforce. But it's not like what happens to the male. So when the black male starts trying to, and I've actually had this conversation with a black woman who said, y'all just full of excuses. Until her brother got locked up like the second or third time. And he had to realize that there's certain places that he had to stop going. And certain of the things that were happening. And then we had that conversation again, you know, a couple years later. And her mind had changed. I said, right. It's amazing what happens when it comes to your house. But see, you couldn't tell her any of that because as a woman, you know, and she was a brighter skinned woman with long hair, looked a certain way. So she walked in the office, they gave her a job. She thinks it's that easy. She thought it was that easy for everybody else. So we all must have just been slacking off. See, because she walked in and she was able to get it. Surely y'all ought to be able to do the same. And that's what letting these few come through the little rabbit hole, that's what it does. It makes them then look down on you and say, well, I've done this. How is it that, you know, you people in the hood can't do it? Go ahead.
Then eventually the mindset turns to, I need to be one of them.
Exactly.
Because you're not good enough.
The mindset is done that way. Even in corporate America, there's a separation between the workers and management. Mm-hmm. You know, they compartmentalize, make departments, and they separate the departments.
Fraternization? No,
you know,
fraternization.
right? You cannot, you know, fraternize with this other group. Now, if you got all the black guys working in the place where they make the products, and then you got the black women in the office with the white man, and they're being told that they're automatically better than this other group of people. Now, even if this sister sees a guy that she is attracted to, she looks at his uniform and says, oh, you one of those. Now, here's the tripped out thing. A guy may be wearing one of them uniforms and making $100,000 a year. He may be wearing one of them uniforms and he clocking 50. He's doing these things. But the perception is he's one of those worker bees. See, I need one of the management bees. See, that is the mindset. It is, when I first graduated from DeVry, I got a job working downtown Atlanta, and I was fixing computer terminals. I was making less than minimum wage, whatever it was. I mean, they just use you coming out of college. You be better off at the car wash. I mean, it was crazy, right? So I'm doing this job, but you know, my stepdad was a school teacher, so he's got all these ties and suspenders and all of these things, and you know, I mix up my little stuff. So I'm going in office buildings, fixing computers, computer terminals. It wasn't worth nothing. But I'm a young black guy, 20 years old, with a suit on, going into offices full of black women. I felt like a piece of meat that just walked in. I have never had situations where women were pulling on me. They're fighting over who's going to get the opportunity to get my number. It was absolutely wild. I'm on my way to the jobs as I'm walking downtown. Women are all at me, just doing all of these things. And I'm like, wow, you know, and I'm just fresh out of school, right? Finally get a real job. But I'm wearing a uniform now. See, I'm a blue collar looking dude. I couldn't pay a sister to look at me. I couldn't buy no attention. And it was amazing because I'm making like 25 times what I was making before. But the perception of what I was making didn't appeal to the black female.
Clothing change.
See? Where your suit at? Where your ties at? Where those fresh suspenders that you had on before? Boo boo, I was broke before. And it's amazing how that ended up going. I ended up buying a house, and when it was really crazy. I bought a house, and I ended up being a young guy with a house. I had to tell the women that I was staying with some other cats, and we was living together, because the women actually flipped on me when they found out it was my house. Their whole mindset changed to, oh well, we got to deal with you differently since you got a house. Oh, okay, so when you thought I wasn't anybody, that I was just a cat to hang out with, then I'm the hang dude. Then when you come to the house and figure out, oh no, this your house, oh my goodness, we need to put some drapes up in here. No, we're not gonna put nothing up in here. We gotta get our own spot. See, this my spot. You gotta stop trying to decorate up in here now. See? Well, no, that we need to, and by this time, of course, I'm in the world at this time. So you watch and you end up dealing with some of these mindsets, and although you read about these things, it's something altogether different when these things happen to you. So I can read these things and I can go over some of these things, but there's some of these things that I've lived through of what this has done to the mindset that, hey, you're above this kind of man, you should not deal with this kind of man, and not understanding that this brother has something going on, but because of the mindset that we've been given, we don't deal with it in that manner. Go ahead, bro.
Exodus chapter 1 and verse 17. But the midwives feared Elohim and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said unto them, Why have you done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered, or the midwives come in unto them.
Right. And we were having somewhat of a discussion last week about these things when it talks about when you see the women upon the stools. When a woman is having a baby, that woman is supposed to be standing up. The gravity helps pull that baby downward. What they are telling us is to lay down in the bed, which of course slow down the contractions. Then they turn around and give our wives that Pitocin, which then slows down the contractions even more, and then they set the young girls up to have a cesarean. And it is a complete setup, and our people don't know. And I actually had to get into a verbal altercation with a doctor that they're trying to give, these instructions. Will lay down, and no, she ain't laying down. So, but you got to have, security in your own mind to fight with these people while they playing these games with you. And meanwhile, I got a Jamaican nurse that was sitting there, and she's, the nurses are doing all the work anyway. The doctor really ain't doing nothing. Then the nurse, after everything is over, the nurse says, I can't say a thing because I'll lose my job. But she said, everything that you said was right. And I'm glad you fought. I'm glad you fought for what you believed in. But if you don't know any better, you're going to go and these people are going to tell you stuff, and you're going to do it just thinking that, okay, well, they're the doctor. Well, this is what they do. And if you don't have anything to stand on, if you don't have any beliefs, they're going to roll right over you and keep going. So a lot of times we read these things, and when you see the women upon the stools, we don't consider that, these women are standing up. Go ahead.
I mean, there was a time when you could go in the hospital and you'd see pregnant women walking around the hospital holding on to the wall.
Right.
You don't see that anymore.
You sure don't. You sure don't. Go ahead.
Verse 20. Therefore Elohim dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared Elohim, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive.
Right. Automatically a separation in between the men and the women. Let the women live, because they will then be absorbed into the culture. Once they mate with them and then they produce kids by them, then the seed will be of the man. So they understand that they will absorb the women into their culture. The men cannot be absorbed into a culture. See, those you got to kill off. So you understand the difference of why we have this divide in between the man and the woman in this country. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 42. So remember in the first thing, it was saying work them very, very rigorously. All right. So you work them very rigorously. That didn't work. Then just go ahead and throw the babies in the river. If it's a male, go ahead and kill off that man child. Isaiah chapter 42, and let's start that at verse 10.
Sing unto Yahweh a new song, and his praise from the end of the earth. You that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice, the village that Kedar does inhabit. Let the inhabitants of the rocks sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory unto Yahweh, and declare his praise in the islands. Yahweh shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yes, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. I have long time holden my peace. I have been still and refrained myself. Now will I cry like a travailing woman. I'll destroy and devour at once.
Right, and this is going to take the nations by surprise, because we are all creatures of habit by nature. He says in verse 14, I've long time holding my peace. What happens when Yahweh doesn't judge for things? People think that Yahweh must agree with their actions. So they have said, you know, hey, we don't do any harm. These people, you know, they're supposed to be slaves. They used to say, okay, well, black people are not considered people. See? They're like, what 3/5 of a human being or whatever they say. So you have, you know, this thing. And because Yahweh says, I've long time holding my peace, they've gotten even more secure in those things. So when all of that is done and Yahweh says, all right, their captivity is over, starting now. So now I'm finna start judging for it. It is going to catch the nations by surprise. Because the more you do something, the more you get accustomed to, oh, well, this is just the way it is. You know, we don't have to answer for why we do this because this is just the way it is. So then when this judgment comes, it is going to catch people, I mean, way off guard. Go ahead.
I'll make waste mountains and hills and dry up all their herbs. And I'll make the rivers islands and I'll dry up the pools.
All right. I will make the rivers islands and I will dry up the pools. Now we're talking about these natural disasters and things that end up happening. We got a president that says that global warming is a hoax. Yet in the same country we'll have a flood in one part of the country and then record drought and heat, you know, just a couple of states over. One is so dry that everything is catching on fire. Another one is so wet that there's flash floods. And I, you know, I used to hear that and not really understand and not be able to comprehend like what a flash flood is. See, flooding is one thing. Flash flooding is, it was dry and in a couple minutes it is completely flooded. This is how much water comes all of a sudden and it doesn't have a chance to go anywhere. So you got people that'll be driving on the road and all of a sudden, whoosh, they're sitting on the top of the car because water has come out of nowhere. It was too much water for it to go anywhere. So people don't really understand how dangerous a flash flood is. It just comes out of nowhere. Go ahead.
Verse 16. And I'll bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I'll make darkness light before them, and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. They shall be turned back. They shall be greatly ashamed, that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, you are our gods.
Right. And we have picked up all of these things from the nations, and we're going to fight to keep them. And Yahweh is going to have to discipline us to get us to let those idols and images go. Go ahead.
Hear, you deaf, and look, you blind, that you may see. Who is blind but my servant? Or deaf as my servant that I sent? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as Yahweh's servant? Seeing many things, but you observe not. Opening the ears, but you hear not. Yahweh is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the law and make it honorable.
He will magnify the law and make it honorable. Yet people tell you that the law was nailed to the cross. But we can go directly to that New Testament and see where Yahshua did magnify the law. He says that you have heard it said from old that if a person commits adultery, then this should happen. He then turns around and said, if you look on a woman to lust after her, you committed that act in your heart already. That's magnifying the law. So while they're telling us the law was nailed to the cross, we can find in the Old Testament and in the New what the law was magnified. They said that thou shalt not kill. But I say that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause is in danger of the judgment. You have killed your brother already. So that's a magnification of the law. So now it's dealing with man's heart and intent. See, the beginning part of the law was dealt with, if you did this, then this happened. Yahshua comes and he magnifies the law because now he's examining your intent when the thought crosses your mind. What is your thought process? What are your intentions here? That's a magnification of the law. And we have people teaching us out of the New Testament that the law was done away with, yet we read in the Old Testament that this was going to happen, that the law was going to be magnified. And we listen to Christ's words, and he very well magnified the law. One part of the law says that if a man saw any uncleanness in his wife, then he can give her a bill of divorce and send her out of his house, and then she can go and become another man's wife. He said, but I tell unto you that it was never so from the beginning. So if a man divorces a woman for any other reason other than fornication, then he has caused her to commit adultery. And everybody that, or anybody who gets with her, has then committed adultery. See, that's something completely different. Moshe said one thing, Yahshua said something else. So Yahshua magnified that law. We didn't see that that is much more difficult to do in these days and times. So we can see where these things have been fulfilled. Go ahead.
Verse 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses.
Snared in holes and hid in prison houses. We already know if they open up these prison houses, you're not going to see Jewish people come out of it. If they open up these prison houses, the people that are going to come out of it look like us. We are the ones snared in holes and hid in prison houses. But do understand, you go back to their policy. Their policy said, all right, you have to grant these people freedom, but if they just so happen to be some sort of criminal, then you can take all their rights away from them. They cannot vote. They cannot bear arms. And consider this. If you have done some horrific things, I mean, you've split up families, you've raped, men and women. That's the thing that we don't like to talk about. We will talk about the raping of the women, but we will not talk about the raping of the men. Do understand that it was boys and men that got raped during that as well. See, but we don't like to discuss that part. So, but if you have committed all of those things, wouldn't it bother you if those people now have guns? See, so now you're dealing with what? The paranoia of the oppressor. Because understanding that they understand that they've done all of these things to you, and now you get to walk around with a gun. So how do you make sure that they don't get to own a firearm? You got to criminalize them at an early stage so that when it's time to have the right to bear arms, they have already lost it. But see, our sisters will see one thing because they're given the job. They don't see that these things happen to the brothers for a reason. They're trying to get and take away the ability to rightfully bear arms. Go ahead, brother. Let's finish that up.
I was going to say, all that also sets up for this race war that they're pushing.
Right.
We won't have weapons because more than half of us will be criminals, so we can't have one.
Exactly. That automatically sets the stage. And we've gone to those gun shows, and we've seen how people are purchasing firearms and ammunition. And it is at an alarming rate. Going to a couple of those things, we would be looking around saying, man, what war are they preparing for? Well, now I know what war they're preparing for. Because these people are now saying, get these people out of here, that these people need to go. We never thought in 2017 that we were going to see, this same thing again, of send these people away. This has been a reoccurring topic that has happened over and over, and our people have just decided that we're not going to deal with it. Go ahead.
They are for a prey, and none delivers, for a spoil, and none says restore.
And none says restore. When we, look at these things, we were brought here for specific purposes. And one of those purposes was never for us to be equal unto the people who once owned us. Isaiah chapter 51, and let's start that at verse 21. And the irony, and this is why I say that things would have to get bad, because since we are creatures of habit and a lot of things have happened, our people are not going to willingly leave America or any other country where we've set up shop. We're not going to do it. It's going to have to be a little bit of forcing in that. When you read all of the things, when you talk about what happened in Egypt, it was them saying, let's kill these people. It was them saying all of these things. Then when the plague started hitting them, it was, get these people out. See? So when it gets down to the point, so like right now, understand, our people say, well, how can it lead to that? Well, now you have white people who just died and got caught up in this thing. Now, if more white people start dying with clashes with white supremacists, you've already seen the highest office of the land, the president, be unwilling to say anything bad about white supremacist leaders or people who do that. If those things keep happening, do understand that those people will say, well, look, if we want to have peace, how about we just get rid of the black people? See, our people can't, in our mind, we can't see it happening. So when we talk about it, people say, well, it can't happen. These with Trump, they've even brought back up the atrocities that happened in Katrina. Go ahead.
Verse 21.
Yeah.
Therefore hear now this, you afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Thus said the Adonai Yahweh, and your Elohim that pleased the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of your hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury. You shall no more drink it again.
Right. You are afflicted and drunken, but not with wine, with the strange doctrine of these people. And we will fight more for the oppressed doctrine than anybody else. There was a this white comedian that said he was talking about religion and whatnot, and he was saying, it is amazing how things go in the black church. He said, in the black church, it is just born out of poverty, out of oppression, and all of these things. And they sing, and they are just so happy. And he said, in the church, if they are rich, is all get out. And they go into church trying to hurry up and get out. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. They're ready to go. And they got all the money in a row. But then you have that thing of these are the churches that really own our churches. Like when our people see Creflo Dollar, they don't see Kenneth Copeland, which is the man who's in charge of Creflo Dollar. See, that's the thing we don't see. We see, when we saw Eddie Long, we didn't see that other dude, Earl Park. Earl Park was the white man who put out Eddie Long. So they got to get double money from us. because they got to get enough money from us. And then they got a portion of that has to go to the white organization. So, we started out reading about the situation in Egypt. There arose another king. So understand what this did. Our people were happy being amongst these people, right? Then all of a sudden another king came in and everything changed. So we're talking about an abrupt change. And nothing gets your attention like an abrupt change. If you go from hot to cold, you may go into shock. Because your body wasn't even ready to change temperatures that quickly. So now we're talking about your mind having to go from having these rights and privileges, and then all of a sudden a new king comes in and everything changes. We are not even in the first year, and the vice president has said, I stand with the president. So when they start questioning him about how you feel about the white supremacy, I stand with the president. The difference is we actually are, as far as our people, we're actually better off that it is Trump. And I'll tell you why. Because he can't hold water in a cup. See, he's going to tell what, like, Mike Pence was cool enough to have a straight face while he still hates our guts. Just like all the rest of the ones before him. It is actually benefiting us that this dude can't stop talking. It is benefiting us that he keeps tweeting every thought that comes in his head. This is an old man who is trapped in the kids' world. This is how the kids operate. Grown men don't acknowledge everything that they do. Grown men don't feel the need to show you a picture of the damn food they just got to eat. Grown men don't do that. Now you got this old man who operates like children. Anything he says automatically is posted. This is how children operate. Grown men don't operate that way. So now you have this thing where he can't back up and take it back. And it's the same thing you try to tell these children when they start dealing with these things. You know you can't unsay that stuff, right? You know you can delete the post, but you know it's never deleted, right? Other people have already copied that and shared it. You just deleted it from your page, but it's still out there. So that helps us because our plight is coming out. Where if it was Mike Pence and he was able to continue to keep a straight face, and this dude has a face as straight as this wall behind me, okay? They showed him walking over to the DMZ, in between North Korea and South Korea, where it's just like this little bitty wall, and he went and did a stare down. Straight disrespectful, looking straight at those people, you know, knowing that the leader is looking through a camera. So he's standing over there to just do this stare down to show aggression towards these people. If it was him that was directly president, he would be able to hide all of these things while he was passing laws to do these very things against us. Where Trump can't stop talking. Mm-hmm. But that leads us to this. Esther chapter 1, and let's start that at verse 1.
Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia.
India to Ethiopia. So he has a broad range of people that he is over. And what they normally do, the same way they've done here, they take in everybody into their military. You conquer those people. You need to also, to rebuild your military, you have to be able to get them to integrate into your army. and be willing to fight to the death for the cause of your army. Go ahead.
Over 127 provinces. That in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him.
Right. Media, we're talking about the Medes, we're talking about Russian. Go ahead.
When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure.
Right. So they had a license to drink and be merry. Go ahead.
Also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus. Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagatha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very angry, and his anger burned in him.
Right. And this is one of those things where you have to understand that a woman is a helpmeet unto a man. And being a helpmeet, that don't mean that, that the woman is supposed to just help him have babies. You're supposed to help that man complete the task that he was given. If a woman is just supposed to be a helpmeet for a man to help him have kids, what happened when she can no longer have kids? Should the marriage be over? They both be married, all the time they're young, and then when they get old, just leave because she can't have kids? No, the helpmeet helps him with the duties that he has been given to do. So this was exceedingly evil. Knowing that this man is a ruler, there's certain things that he has to do. Then for the woman to decide, I'm not going to come to your engagement. Go ahead.
Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next on to him was Karshena, Shatar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law? Because she has not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen has not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes, and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus.
Right. Now, of course, when she's doing this, she's thinking about her. And even when, brothers are dealing with their own personal situations, a lot of times they're thinking about their situations, but they're not thinking about, do you understand the precedent that you are allowing to be set in front of all the other families? See, it's one of those things that we just don't consider. We're thinking about our own personal this and our own personal that. But you do understand the people watching, right? Go ahead.
For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and anger. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she.
Now do understand now, this is other people that are watching this, other people in the royal court that end up having to bring this before him. But you think he's not? He's a king. You don't think he know this stuff? He know it. And it says why they brought it to him, because they saw his face.
Mm-hmm.
See, we try to hide stuff through, we'll close the mouth. But that face tell a story. Go ahead.
And when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small.
Both to great and small. So that a man don't have to be king, or a man don't have to be some great ruler to have respect in his own house. Go ahead.
And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. It should be published according to the language of every people. See, when you want something to go forward, this is in antiquity, okay? So they made this thing, they made this law, then they published it in every language that anybody spoke in the entire kingdom, and published it. There are laws passed here that none of us know about until we break one of them and end up in court. So it is very clear that they wanted everybody to understand this new law, and to understand that this was going to be something that would be pushed. Esther chapter 2. Keep going. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegi the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleased the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
Now, a lot of times when we look up at situations, we look at this happened because of this, or this happened because of that. Sometimes Yahweh is starting way in advance and dealing with some things, because this situation with Vashti is then going to open the door for Hadassah, or Esther, as she is known. So then this opens the door for something else. See, there are things that Yahweh starts dealing with, and this is why I always tell people, Yahweh didn't just start dealing with you when you got in the Word. What happens is he started dealing with you on a higher level when you got in the Word. Go ahead.
Esther chapter 2 and verse 5. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Yehudi, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Yehuda, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter.
Right. So what you're then seeing then is the name that says what her heritage is, Hadassah, but then you have Esther, the name that glorifies them. You'll find all of the time in this captivity that our people have a name for us among us, and then there's a name that we have amongst the heathen. See, today we call that your government name. You got that slave name. So you got that slave name and that government name. Then you had a name that you were called amongst believers. And if that is the same name, you might have a problem. Go ahead.
For she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hegi, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her, out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it.
Right. Understanding that this person rules over all of this vast area, now you got a mixed kingdom with a lot of different people about, and it has been told, don't explain to them who you are at this point. See, these things will come to help the children of Israel at a later point. Go ahead.
And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did, and what should become of her. Now when every maid's turn was come to go in unto King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women.
Right. So this is a very long process. Go ahead.
Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shahazagaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but that Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her.
Right. So then now we see how Esther is going to come into this picture. So now she ends up being in this area of being with the king. So now she has political power. Jump to verse 19.
And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Tirash, of those which kept the door, were angry, and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known by Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
So now Yahweh puts Esther in a situation, then puts Mordecai in a situation. See, there are certain things that happen to you that don't really pan out or really make sense at that particular time. So he was made to know of this thing that was going to happen unto the king. And then being that close to Esther, he was able to get that information to a certain place. See, a lot of times Yahweh is working on you to protect you from some stuff that you don't even know is happening. All right, jump to chapter 3 and verse 1.
After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgress you the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman, to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Yehudi. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of anger.
Right. So he feel like he being disrespected. So now he's got serious issues because the man is not bowed to him. Go ahead.
And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Yehudis that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
All right, now you need to pay attention right there. Haman was upset with Mordecai. At the end of the day, he then said, we need to destroy all of them. See, you need to know that this is a customary thing of the heathen. When they would always, we don't have to think back that far. They would always say some black guy winked at a white woman. Before you know it, the entire town is burnt down. We got Black Wall Street. We got the places in Florida. We got all of these places, and these are just the ones that were publicized. One person did something in Forsyth County here in Georgia. Same thing. A supposed thing happened. Next thing you know, the entire town of black people were killed, ran out of town, and all of their land taken. So when you see this, a lot of times our people read this and they separate it from the things that we have undergone here. There's one altercation between one man and another man, and now all of the people's lives are in danger. We need to stop looking at it like, that's not possible. We've seen it too many times here. Go ahead.
In the first month, that is, in the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pure, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is, the month Adar.
Now understand that these pagan names for months come from us being in those pagan kingdoms. So you'll find a lot of Hebrews that start dealing with these months. Yahweh didn't give names for the months except the beginning months, Abib. And he didn't give a day for any day except the Sabbath. It was first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, Sabbath day. So it automatically is sanctified. Why? It is sanctified, which means set apart. It is set apart because all of the other ones are just numbered, and then this one has a name. But how does the devil then denounce that? Well, if you make this one special because it's the only one with a name, I'm going to give all of them names. That way, it won't be sanctified anymore. It won't be separated. You have to watch how the adversary works. Go ahead.
And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the province of your kingdom. And their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them.
Right. When I get ready to try to get these people to bow to me, they don't want to bow to me. We need to get rid of these people because they got these strange laws. It's going to make it hard for us to rule over these people. Go ahead.
If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I'll pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasury.
Right. I'll pay for the execution of these people. Now, this is coming from their governmental structure. See, the one thing about it, when we look at the governmental structure here, we see the one person who's standing in the front, but then you find out that now they're bringing into question the chief advisor, saying that they think even worse than he thinks. Go ahead.
And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Yehudi's enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to you, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to you.
Right. So now he has obtained a law, a decree to go and kill all the children of Yehuda. All the children of Israel that are amongst this ruled over point. He is now getting the authority to kill them. Go ahead.
Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring.
Right. That was the stamp of authority. Like when something gets notarized and you see that stamp, the king's ring, you grab that ring, stick it in a thing of ink, and then stamp that piece of paper. So when they go and read that piece of paper and they see the stamp of the king, then they know that this is an official document come from the ruling authority. Go ahead.
And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Yehudis, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day.
Right. So then you think about what was done in Exodus. It says, charge all the people that they go and kill these people. See, we keep thinking that it's just so far-fetched that this would not possibly happen here. See, we don't understand that these things have already happened before, and it happened to us. But because we don't read this stuff for historical value, we read it to be entertained. That we don't process this information. Go ahead.
The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed.
Keep going.
When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes, and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Yehudis, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes.
Right, because they have gotten a hold of this decree, this law that has said, we will execute these people at this such and such time. And they've gotten a, imagine if you open your mail and it tell you what day you gonna die. It'd be kind of hard for you to maintain regular thought process. Go ahead.
So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai, to know what it was, and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai onto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Yehudis, to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people.
Now, she's in this position because some other woman was disrespectful And then they held all of this thing. Now, because she has not told the people exactly what her nationality is, they didn't know how to come at her. So Yahweh has orchestrated this thing so that she's in a certain position to help her people. But they don't even know that this is her people. Go ahead.
Esther chapter 4 and verse 9. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again Esther spake unto Hatak, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told it to Mordecai, Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with yourself that you shall escape in the king's house, more than all the Yehudis. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Yehudis from another place. But you and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you are come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Right. So who knows whether all of this has happened so that you would be the one close enough to the king to give this message unto him. See, I keep telling people that everything that we get doesn't belong to us. We get a raise and we done already spent that money before we get it. They tell us we're going to get a raise. We done already picked out the car. We done picked out the new car. The raise ain't even showed up on the check yet. We already at the lot. Excuse me, can you show me the blue one with the leather interior? They ain't got the money yet. Everything that happened to you is not about you. And this is that thing that we've been twisted into believing, my own personal Lord and Savior. Oh, okay, so he's not going to save nobody else. Just you. That's why people want a personal prophecy. Okay, so we don't need a prophecy like as a people, because like all of the prophets here were dealing with like the whole, lot of Israel. Like not like you at 3817 Wichita Drive. It ain't just like your house. So like your whole, like the prophecy is just for you. That's it. It don't include nobody else. There's something wrong with that prophecy. Go ahead.
Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Yehudis that are present in Shushan, and fast you for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish.
If I die, I die. I'm finna break the law, but I'm finna break the law for a good reason. Okay? So I need for y'all to fast with me. I'm gonna fast, but I'm finna put my life on the line to try and help save my people. Go ahead.
So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What will you, Queen Esther? And what is your request? It shall be given you to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him.
Right. So now she's dealing with this thing in a certain way. Go ahead.
Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is your petition? And it shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I'll do tomorrow as the king has said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful, and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said moreover, Yes, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king onto the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Yehudi sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go you in merrily with the king onto the banquet.
Right, you're going to be happy after you kill somebody. So go kill somebody. Go, so you don't have to look at his face. And then go to the banquet. So then you can be really happy after you hang this man because he wouldn't bow to you. Go ahead.
And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
Right. Now see, a lot of times things are being built that, it was a thing that, my folks used to say when I was little. Whenever you dig a hole, dig two. See, while you're digging that hole for somebody else, go ahead and dig one for yourself. Because that's just how judgment goes. So now they're building an apparatus to hang this man on. Keep going.
On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king.
Right. The king could not sleep, and to fix this, sleeping issue, let me just go get some stuff to read. See, this is how Yahweh works. All of this stuff is being put in place. So when we see people and presidents and all of the people who are rulers at a certain time, do understand that they have been born for the purpose and the time that they are in. See, this information that we are discussing right now, us knowing the word that we have right now, you have to consider something. If our people knew this in 1910, 1900, what would it prosper? It was way too early. See, certain things have to happen in certain times. People think it's just a coincidence that all of a sudden now this word is being spoken. It wasn't going to prosper you being a slave and knowing these things. Go ahead.
And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, What honor and dignity has been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, There's nothing done for him.
Now, consider, now he's just hanging, not sleeping. Now he's found this thing out, but now there's already a banquet prepared. You see how Yahweh works? But see, we either think we do something on our own or we belittle what Yahweh brings and hands us. We act like little spoiled children. Yeah, I should have got it. Yahweh is delivering this hand by hand, step by step. And this includes different people. Go ahead.
And the king said, Who is in the court? Now Haman was come in to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him.
Now, Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai. So he's on his way to talk about hanging the man. He done already built,
the gallows to hang the man, and he on his way to have the conversation to let's talk about hanging this man. Go ahead.
And the king's servant said unto him, Behold, Haman stands in the court. And the king said, Let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, What shall be done unto the man whom the king delights to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself?
Right. Now see, this is what vanity do for you. See, this is what vanity do for you. Who else could the king be talking about other than me? I mean, see, this is how Yahweh deceives you with even truth. He makes you think that the gift that's about to be delivered is going to be delivered to you, thereby causing your heart to speak a certain way about this gift, not knowing he's not giving that to you. Go ahead.
And Haman answered the king, For the man whom the king delights to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king used to wear, and the horse that the king rides upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head.
Yeah, cause he talking about himself. Okay, see, he like this is wonderful. Go ahead.
And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with all whom the king delights to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.
Right, you should let me do this. So really, instead of saying the man that the king delights to honor, he needs to say, well, let me ride on the horse. Give me your clothes. Give me your crown. I mean him. I mean, you know, them, or whoever that is. And then let them proclaim through the streets that I mean him, whoever he is, that he is a great man. And you spell my name H-E. Right. Go ahead.
Then the king said to Haman, Make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as you have said, and do even so to Mordecai the Yehudi, that sits at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that you have spoken.
So now Yahweh has caused the man's enemy to proclaim how he should be arrayed with honor. Go ahead.
And all the other people you thought was going to do it, no, you going to do it.
See, that's how Yahweh works. See, while he's digging a hole and building a gallows to hang the man on, now you have to promote the man to honor. Go ahead and sound like his honor higher than yours. Because you thought he was talking about you. Go ahead.
Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delights to honor.
Ooh, and you got to do it. And you hate him. Go ahead.
And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his...
Oh, he upset. This real live man cry. Go ahead.
You know, but he even said it. Let it be delivered by the hand of one of the king's noble princes.
Right.
Ain't you above all of them?
See? But see, you think about, that's what happens when the adversary get off into there and get your vanity going and got you thinking about you, that he couldn't even see that that might be somebody else. Go ahead.
And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai be of the seed of the Yehudis, before whom you have begun to fall, you shall not prevail against him, but shall surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hastened to bring Haman onto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is your petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted you. And what is your request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that dares presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is this wicked man.
Wicked Haman.
Wicked Haman, pardon me. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine, in his anger, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king.
Now, he has set up all of these things, but now when it comes to him, it's like watching the old gangster movies. After they done kill like 20, 30 people, then it's time for them to die, and they be like, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I don't want to die. You just killed 30 people. Oh, didn't all them people beg for their life? You didn't spare any of their lives. Go ahead.
Verse 8. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house?
Oh boy, he going down. Boy, he going down hard, right? He said, You gonna fall onto the bed where the woman is? King, you about to take it? You gonna take it while I'm standing there? Go ahead.
As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, stand in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon.
Now, he has built this thing to hang this man. And people say, yeah, man, he got it at his house. He done built the thing. He's going to be hanging Mordecai. You remember the man who discovered a plot? Now, see, this is the thing. We are ready to be justified or all of those things for everything that we've done. But there's certain things that Yahweh is holding back, your reward, because your reward needs to come at a certain time. So here it is. He did this thing in knowing this plot, and it helped the king, but it was supposed to stay hidden. Because had it been out there, then a lot of this other stuff wouldn't have gone so far. So now these things are revealed, and now he finds out that he has set up his own death apparatus. Go ahead.
You know, in this day and time of instant gratification, none of us would have been holding our peace like Mordecai. You mean I did this all for this man, and look at what he now Mordecai just held his peace.
Right. I saved his life. He'd be dead if it wasn't for me. Go ahead.
Verse 10. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's anger pacified. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Yehudi's enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her.
So now, she is now then told everybody who she is. Now he understands who her people truly are. But now we're about to understand some of the things that happens with the Ish, and some of the things that they end up celebrating, and why they end up celebrating. Go ahead.
And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his advice that he had devised against the Yehudis. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Amadeatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yehudis, which are in all the king's provinces.
Which are in all the king's provinces, so they're spread out. Now, there's certain things you then have to notice then. See, putting an enormous amount of people in one area then causes those people to have a higher concentration. There's a reason why they want to constantly call you a minority. So, if you spread the people out and spread them out really thin, you will always outnumber those people that way. If you let too many of them occupy a certain area, then they become the majority and have an opportunity at some kind of uprising. So you need to understand that this is how the heathen operates, to spread you out thin. To this day, you'll be riding down the street and go past an elementary school and it'll say town hall meeting. And that town hall meeting is about how they're going to redraw the district lines. And now the people who are now in one district, they are about to be in another district, even though they haven't moved. This is why when they were doing certain voting here in Atlanta, you had people showing up to the polls and they weren't even in the district. They had redrawn the district so many times that people were confused if they were supposed to vote or not. And this happens every time one of our black schools win a state championship. You have white schools who have won state championship 5 and 6, 7 times in a row. That does not happen with black schools. And I will tell you why. Every time they win, you find that they might be in like the 4A champs or the 5A champs. So they got 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A. All right? When a black school win in 4A and then a black school win in 3A, all of a sudden those two schools are going to be, the district lines are going to be redrawn. That then pushes those two championship teams against one another. What that means is it is highly unlikely that the same team will continue to win, because now you put them in a bracket that's much harder. Put all the black teams who have won championships in one bracket. So at the end of the day, only one of them will emerge. If you had one in 1A, one in 2A, one in 3A, one in 4A, one in 5A, you could actually have 5 black schools as championship teams. Not gonna happen. And our people don't watch and see it happen. You look up and say, well, how are they playing this team for the championship when that team was a championship team in another division and this team was a championship team in a different division? They redraw those lines so that it constantly works in the oppressor's favor. So we need to see that the same thing that happens now is the same thing that's been happening. Go ahead.
Esther chapter 8 and verse 6. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come on to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Yehudi, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Yehudis. Write you also for the Yehudis, as it likes you, in the king's name, and seal it in the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called in that time in the 3rd month, at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Yehudis, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies, and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Yehudis according to their writing, and according to their language.
Right. So this lets you know that they want everybody to understand this. They want everybody to deal with it. They've written this thing in multiple languages. Here you're going to get some in English and maybe Spanish.
Go ahead.
And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Yehudis which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey.
So now you're talking about the reversal of the thing that was there before. So this is when they have this thing when it talks about, well, it's going to get to that. Go ahead.
Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is in the month Adar. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Yehudis should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Yehudis had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Yehudis had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Yehudis, for the fear of the Yehudis fell upon them.
Right. So now these other people are turning and saying, well, now we Jews too now, because now we see that they have this power, even though we're all being ruled over by these people. Now we want to be Yehudis as well. We're part of the Yehudim. Go ahead.
Now in the 12th month, that is in the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Yehudis hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Yehudis had rule over them that hated them, the Yehudis gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and officers of the king helped the Yehudis, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Yehudis smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace, the Yehudis slew and destroyed 500 men.
Now, do understand, it says now other people have become Yehudim now. Now, this is how some people so-called became Jews. Now, they're coming to become Jews at a slaughter of killing people who had once tried to kill them. Now, this is one of the Ish holidays that they keep. And you have to consider this war-hungry Ish. This is how some of these people transformed into being Yehudis at this killing. So you think about something. If this is how you walked in the door, this is how you plan on staying in there. By straight murder and mayhem. Go ahead.
Verse 7. And Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Paratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashta, and Arisia, and Aridai, and Vayathi, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Yehudis, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand.
Right. See, this is what happened when, you have like these evil intentions, and now your whole family has been made to suffer because of your evil intentions. Go ahead.
On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Yehudis have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. Or what is your request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, If it please the king, let it be granted to the Yehudis which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hang Haman's 10 sons. For the Yehudis that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Yehudis that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey.
Right. So this is a lot of killing. And do understand now, some people just became so-called converted. Now this is how they get in. They like, look, man, hey, I want to be a part of this. Well, hey, man, we killing these people, Jack. This is a cool group to be a part of, man. Yeah, man, we like that. We want to be Jews, man, because we get to kill people. This is how they get in the door now. Go ahead.
On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Yehudis that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
Feasting and gladness that they have been able to kill their enemies. Go ahead.
Therefore the Yehudis of the village that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another.
And of sending portions one to another. Now, you find that they're, doing these things. This has now been turned into a feast. Do understand that they're under captivity as these things are done. All right. So now they're happy about this. Now this is now finna explain one of the so-called holy days that the Jewish keep that we don't keep. Go ahead.
And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Yehudis that were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly.
Right. So they want to commemorate this. Here's the thing. Yahweh has given us all our holy days in Leviticus. But this right here is then added as a holy day, which is about killing their enemies. And hey, if it's definitely something to remember that people tried to go against you and you were able to do this. But then understand, this is also twisting the mindset of these people who really don't know anything about Jewish culture. What they know is that you were given authority to kill people. Now you think about how the people operate in the land. What they put on the news is what the Palestinians do. They don't show you all the evil that Israel does to, their neighbors and all of the things that ends up happening. But do understand, you have some of these people that this was their hearing about Israel when they got to kill this enormous amount of people. Go ahead.
As the days wherein the Yehudis rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor.
What they're doing, they're making them a Jewish Christmas. Now they're sending gifts to one another. See? Go ahead.
And the Yehudis undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Yehudis, had devised against the Yehudis to destroy them, and had cast pure, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them.
Right. So now they keep this so-called holy day of Purim, and do understand what it was all about, the killing of their enemies. So this is a big thing among the Ish, because they're going to have to fight constantly, because you're trying to inhabit a land that is not yours. So you have to magnify the day that speaks of killing all of your enemies. See, they need this day because they're trying to occupy something that don't belong to them. And as the people fight back, you need to have this as a constant reminder. Remember now, we can kill our enemies. Remember now, we can kill them. We can kill them. Remember how many people were killed back then? We can kill them. So now, this killing mentality is automatically put forth and then merged into the holy days. Go ahead.
But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Yehudis, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of pure. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come on to them, the Yehudis ordained, and took upon them, and upon their seed, upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year.
That they would keep these every year. Do understand that they're in captivity. So this was not ordained in any temple. This was not ordained by any king of Israel. This was not ordained by any official priest. This was ordained in captivity. Even look at the months of this. All the months are pagan names as when they ordained it. Go ahead.
You know, even in that it says that they ordained it, and all of them that joined themselves onto it. So every year you're getting into this more and more and more.
Right.
More and more. It becomes like, well, this is our culture.
Exactly. Our culture then is to kill anybody that get in our way. Right. And this is how, understand now, this is how some started. You have to remember, they had a real problem coming out of Egypt with the mixed multitude. The mixed multitude didn't know anything about what Israel was about. They was about, look, we got to get out of Egypt, brother. You know, we got to get out of here. Man, hey, man, we seen dead cattle and everything over there, man. Flies and lice and frogs and bloody water. We got to go. We going with them. They don't know nothing about, the culture. They just trying to get away from Egypt. Go ahead.
Verse 28. And that these things should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Yehudis, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Yehudi, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim.
Now, I'm going to put some out there, because you'll look at all of the things that Yahweh has done in this, and you say, well, Yahweh ordained it. No, Yahweh ordained the saving of his people. The whole making of the feast, you have to wonder about that, even with all of the other people coming in. This is the first thing that they know about becoming a Jew, is killing. Think back when Yahweh ended up making a brazen serpent. And because Yahweh sent serpents among the people, because they wouldn't follow instructions. So if they got bit by one of the snakes, then they would look upon the brazen serpent, and they would be healed. After a while, Israel started worshiping the brazen serpent and called it Nehushtan. They gave it a name and started worshiping it. So you got the introduction to something, and before you know it, we out worshiping the thing. So you got this one thing that, because at the end of the day, if we make a holy day out of every time that Yahweh delivers us, We ain't gonna have no regular day. See, you got to think about it outside of this thing. Yeah, he did something great. Yahweh does something great constantly. The book of Judges is constantly full of Yahweh delivering us. Did we make a holy day for every last one of them? See, adding these other holy days then does a thing. Yahweh has 7 days in creation. He has 7 golden candlesticks. Yahshua was given the 7 spirits of Elohim. Then we have 7 holy days. By adding these other holy days, that's why the Jewish have a 9-branch menorah and we have a 7. Because we got 7 holy days. Matter of fact, do y'all know it's very difficult to get a 7-branch menorah? If you go to the Jewish and say, I'm looking for a 7-branch menorah, they're like, what you gonna do with it? What? You in a temple? They start asking me all kind of questions. You don't want the 9? No, I don't want them other 2 spirits. I don't want them other 2. See, Yahshua got 7 spirits. And there's 7 holy days. I don't know who them other 2 is. I don't know who them other 2. See, I don't need them 2 extra spirits in my house. I need you to take them 2 extra spirits and go on about your business. Because I don't know what they about. See, we can go in Isaiah 11 and we can read 7 spirits. We hear Yahshua talking about, we even hear in Revelation, the 7 golden candlesticks, the 7 eyes. We get the 7, all of these things. But they got a 9-branch menorah. They got 9 golden sticks. We're supposed to have 7. There's 7 angels with 7 trumps with 7 vials. But they got 9. And yes, Yahweh does great things for the children of Israel all the time. He's going to do a great thing when he removes us from the current captivity. Are we going to make a holiday for that too? What are we going to call it? The death of Babylon Day? The day America failed day?
The Greater Exodus.
But here's the problem. We ain't just coming from this place. What about all the people who in South America? Now, so they going to make their own day? It's going to be called some Spanish thing? What about the people who going to come from Europe and Yahweh got to go get them? They going to make their own holiday too? So we have to consider these things. Yahweh gave us in Leviticus 23 what our days are, and that's how we have to deal with these things. Yahweh has done many great and wonderful things for the children of Israel, and we will not be able to commemorate every last one of them with a holy day. Yahweh has set forth what his holy days are. But that's all that we're going to do for tonight. Let's leave out with the prayer. We are going to rise and face the east. And all males, remove your head covering. And females always pray with their head covered. Abba Father, Most High Covenant Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, Yahweh, we are constantly humbled by you allowing us to borrow of your spirit of understanding, because we know that we do not understand anything on our own. We know that there's no growth that we have received that you haven't allowed for us to have. And we thank you, Yahweh. And we pray, Father, that you would allow each and every listener, each and every viewer to grow in this word, but not just grow in understanding. For knowledge and understanding is how our people got destroyed in the garden. Just knowing things for knowledge's sake is one thing, but to learn something for salvation's sake is something altogether different. We pray, Father, that you would also give us a understanding heart, that we may be able to actually walk in the things that you open up unto us. We ask these prayers not only for those that gather with us physically, but even those that gather by way of phones and by way of internet, those that gather out of a pure heart to serve you in truth and in spirit. In Yahshua HaMashiach's holy and divine name we pray. Amen and hallelujah.
Amen.